guys, it's Erica Galinas with the Mike McCaddy Real Estate Team at Century 21 Affiliated, coming to you this week with our Ask the Agent segment. I want to talk about something this week that I've actually heard recently from a couple different people. It's something, I'm sure you've heard of it, rent to own. You know, all this rent to own, and they have rent to own furniture, and I guess kind of a car lease is kind of a rent to own. But rent to own actually exists for real estate as well. I'm going to talk about what it is, how it works, and why mostly you can't find it anymore. So, basics of a rent-to-own. When you have either a seller with a house problem or a buyer with a budget problem, a lot of times a seller and a buyer would come together. You wouldn't have to go through like a traditional loan, a mortgage program. You wouldn't have to worry about those kinds of things. Either the house wouldn't qualify for a loan, maybe a buyer wouldn't qualify for a loan. The buyer and seller would basically drop legal documents that say that the buyer pays, I'm going to make up numbers, $1,000 a month to rent to own this house. So a portion of that payment, say $700, would go towards a payoff amount. And then $300, usually to pay taxes through the term. And, it depends on what parties would negotiate. But that's the basic idea. You would make one monthly payment. Part of it would go towards like a small rent. And then the other would go towards a purchase price of, $100,000 every month. And you could figure out, how many months it's going to take to pay it off. And those are the kinds of things you would negotiate between a buyer and seller. So now here's the deal. Those don't really exist anymore for a lot of different reasons. They were very popular back, I guess, when we were kids, at least when I was a kid. President Carter, there's all these reasons why. But we had interest rates on home loans, 17%, 20%, sometimes 25%. Basically, nobody could afford to buy a house with that kind of interest rate. So instead of having a payment that would be $1,000 a month at 3.5% interest, your payment would be $2,000 a month at 17% interest. Obviously, that math doesn't work out, but you get the idea. These interest rates were so high, no buyer, even a good buyer, couldn't necessarily qualify for a loan, so a buyer and seller would come together and come up with a deal where you would do a rent-to-own. Obviously, we don't have an interest rate problem anymore. Rates are probably going to drop again. We're back at like 3.75% now. So most buyers who could qualify normally is certainly going to qualify with an interest payment because that brings your payment down. Here's the thing that I hear most often from buyers is that they really want to buy a house because, most people want to buy a house, but they're worried that they don't have the right credit. They're worried that they don't have, they have like an income problem. Maybe they're self-employed and they've only been self-employed for 6 months and most lenders look for 2 years, but there's some kind of problem with them getting a mortgage. The number one problem that people have in this situation getting a mortgage is they lack a down payment. We'll talk about this a little later, but there's a bunch of different ways to do it. But a lot of people think you need $25,000 to buy a house. Just down payment, bam. Ideally, yes, you would have $25,000 to put down on a house, but you don't. You got $50 in the bank because life is life, and a lot of people are paycheck to paycheck. So they think they can go into these rent-to-owns and have a kind of situation like you would rent an apartment. 1 month's rent and another month's rent for a deposit, and bam, you're good to go. However, that is not how it works. Most sellers who would even think about doing a rent-to-own or owner-financed, which is another way to put it, they're going to be looking for a tremendous amount of money up front. It's not going to be first month's mortgage plus, times 2. It's going to be, okay, here's the monthly payment, and I need 20% down. I need 10% down. So actually, most of the time, you're looking at a much worse down payment rate than if you were just to go get a mortgage. So for people who are looking to rent to own because they think they're going to be able to do away with that down payment problem, that's actually the opposite of how it actually works. If you look at it from the seller's perspective, right now in this market, particularly where we are in Northwest Indiana, but nationwide, it's hard to keep houses on the market. We have so much buyer demand out there that sellers really don't have any problem selling their houses. So if you look at a seller, they're going to look at a buyer who's pre-approved and everything else versus a rent-to-own situation that want to put, 1.5% down and can kind of walk out at any time. No, there's no world in which they're going to do a rent-to-own situation. I don't disagree. I would not recommend to any of my sellers. I can't think of an instance where I would recommend to my sellers to do a rent-to-own situation. There are now so many loan programs out there. So if you have a seller that has a complicated house to sell, like it needs repairs, or there's some kind of easement issue, or there's something weird going on, there's usually a way around that through a loan program. And honestly, barring that, list it for cash. I mean, if you got something that's in really bad shape, let's put it on the market. We'll find a cash buyer, that kind of thing. I would not recommend to any of my sellers to ever do a rent-to-own. A, because there's buyers out there, no matter what the house is. But B, they have to look at the buyer's intentions as well. When you sit down and you sign a mortgage loan for 30 years, there's a serious commitment that you're going to stick with this house, that you like this house, that you're going to continue to pay for this house. At that time, there's also a deed signed transferring ownership from the seller to the buyer. In a rent-to-own situation, there is no deed that is transferred. So, the seller owns this house that they want to get rid of for whatever reason. They may still have a mortgage payment. They're still paying taxes on it. They're still paying probably some kind of insurance on it. And you have a buyer that wants to move in and pay you rent to own, but really there's nothing on the table for them. They could walk away at any time. And some people, are jerks, but some people have job transfers, or they outgrow the house, or, there's all kinds of different things that happen. So through no fault of their own, this buyer is going to walk. So now the seller still has the house, still has the tax payments to make, possibly a mortgage payment, possibly insurance, and now they got to go through the same thing with another buyer to get rid of the house. So from the seller's perspective, they don't want to sell these rent-to-own because they need to make sure a buyer has skin in the game. And they do that through a massive down payment. They do that through, they're going to look at your credit. They're going to look at your income. They're going to look at all the same things that any apartment complex or anybody else is going to look at. So if you have those kinds of challenges in your buyer file, I guess you'd say, you're going to run into the same thing and probably worse with a rent-to-own owner, because they're going to be looking at it with a fine-tooth comb. They don't get to just sell this, loan to somebody immediately and, the whole thing that mortgage companies do. No. They got to stick with you for the next X number of years, until you're done and he can transfer that deed. The other thing is that, you anticipate these lower rent-to-own payments because you think they're going to be more affordable, but I can't think of any rent-to-own contract, land contract, owner financing that's going to let you go 30 years. Think about it. If you were in their position, you have this house you need to sell for whatever reason, because you moved away, job transfer, whatever. You're going to look at somebody and be like, okay, I'll give you this house. Let's say you figured out the down payment, you figured out everything else. Call me in 30 years when it's all done, and I'll give you the deed. I'll transfer the deed. Obviously, they're not going to do that. These rent-to-own timelines on these, you're talking 5 years maybe, 10 years. So what that means is that if you find a house that you like, let's say it's $150,000, you're going to have to pay off $150,000 plus the rental upcharge, I guess you'd say, to cover the taxes and insurance and everything else, in a much shorter time frame, 5 years, as opposed to 30 years. So you're going to have to pay this house off in 1/6 the time that you would if you got a traditional 40-year mortgage. People die in 30 years. Like, anything could happen in 30 years, and the seller isn't going to want to take the risk on that. And honestly, I don't blame them. So where does this leave you guys? So if you're thinking of rent-to-own because you think it's a affordable way to get into a new house that you are buying equity in, I guess you'd say, here's what I would recommend. Call a loan person. I can certainly give you recommendations. There are tons of them out there. Like I've said in the past, if you call one and you don't like them, call somebody else. There's any number of loan people you can talk to. You may think that you need an 800 credit score. You may think that you need $50,000 in extra income a month. You may think that you need 20% down to close on these mortgages, and that is just not true. We have tremendous loan programs right now. We have 0% down loan programs in some geographic areas for veterans, those kinds of things. We have down payment assistance programs through Lake County, through the state of Indiana, that can help you get that down payment together if you don't go 0%. I have seen some loans that are written with credit scores of, 610. I saw one time a 580. It was, I don't know if we can get another 580. That was kind of an amazing situation. But 580 credit, they gave them a 30-year mortgage. Income issues, if there are, stuff like self-employment, if there is a big income gap, call a loan officer or call me. I'll put you in touch with one. All of those problems can be dealt with. And if you call them today and it doesn't work because your credit sucks or because you don't have enough money, they will work with you to figure out how to get you into a mortgage program. They, just like a lot of people, don't get paid unless you take out a mortgage, so they're going to help you every step along the way. Let's say you have a $4,000 tax refund, and you don't know if you should use it for a down payment, or you don't know if you should pay off these medical bills, or you don't know what's going on. Call a lender. I'll give you a name, anytime. They will tell you things like, okay, pay off this bill. Okay, don't worry about this bill. That's no big deal. Use this for your down payment. Okay, talk to your agent about, we're going to ask for this part of the closing costs. I'm going to hook you up with this Lake County Down Payment Assistance Program. There's all these different tools to get you guys into houses. I know it seems like there is a lack of affordable housing just because how the market is. I'm not going to deny that at all. But I know it feels like there is no way for somebody who doesn't make $1 million, who's had credit problems in the past, who has all these different things that happen, I'm never going to get to buy a house. The best I can do is rent to own. That is not true. There's always a way to get somebody into a house in most cases. No promises, but I've seen some pretty bad issues still get a mortgage. The second thing, in no world is a rent-to-own situation a better situation than getting a mortgage and buying a house. You may have to delay it a year while you save some money or pay off some bills. You might have to compromise on what kind of house you want. A 3-bedroom with an extra bedroom in the basement versus a 4-bedroom, or a 2-story versus a ranch, or something older versus something newer. There will be compromises around the way, but here's the deal. If you purchase a house with a mortgage, traditional transaction, you're going to be building equity in that house. If you do a rent-to-own, you are giving the owner the equity, because in the same way that a seller is kind of like, I don't want to, give somebody the house to try out for a while, you guys, anything could happen with the seller. They could turn out to be a creep or just make a mistake or circumstances change. There is no guarantee you will ever move into that house, and all of that money you have paid toward it is gone. Certainly, you could call a lawyer and sue everybody all day, but you're going to pay a lawyer and it's going to take forever. No. Don't do rent-to-own. If somebody approaches you about, hey, rent-to-own, call me, and we'll figure out, maybe it's a great deal. Maybe we could totally get it done, and it'll be the best thing. I would be amazed if that happens, because rent-to-own deals now are not good deals pretty much for anybody involved. So if you're thinking of rent-to-own because you don't think you can buy, call me. 219-765-2062. You can also text me at that number. I will put you in contact with a lender with a ton of loan programs, with a ton of different options, one of which should be able to conquer whatever problem you think you have with your credit, with your income, all of those things. If it can't do it right away, we can figure out how to get it done in the next 6 months to a year. Like I said, if somebody approaches you about it, sometimes there's like for sale by owners out there that are kind of meh, and sometimes, my neighbor's buddy thing from work has a thing with this, just call me. Be like, hey, sounds like a great deal. Let me talk to my real estate agent, because 99 times out of 100, it is not a good deal for you, particularly as a buyer, but certainly also for a seller as well. So like I said, call me, text me anytime, 219-765-2062. Email me if it's easier, hsbyerica, so stands for Home Sales by Erica, @gmail.com. Like my page here on Facebook, Home Sales by Erica. I do these videos once a week. It'll give you a way to direct message me. Any way you can go. You stop by the Cherville Century 21 affiliated office and ask for me. They'll be able to get a hold of me. But I really want to do two things. I don't want to discourage anybody from thinking they can get a house. I want to encourage people to contact me, because rent-to-own is not the way to go. And I want to encourage people that think they're never going to be able to buy a house that, yeah, you are. We just got to figure out a plan. And let me tell you, we can figure out a plan. So if that's the situation you're in, if you're a seller who is thinking, like, I have this problematic house that won't go FHA, maybe I'll try rent-to-own, I can help you out with that too. Because like I said, there's a million ways to sell a house without resorting to a rent-to-own or owner financing situation. So contact me anytime. If you guys have any other questions, I know a lot of things about a lot of things. So comment down below. Let me know what you guys are curious about. Call me, text me, smoke signals, whatever. That's fine. I will totally answer your questions for you. So thanks a lot, and I will talk to you guys soon. Have a good one.